Director Yoon Hana stood alone before the great window of Earth's orbital command station. Below her, the blue planet turned slowly in the darkness. Above her, thousands of ships moved in perfect silence, their engines glowing soft orange against the black sky. Each ship carried families, memories, and the last pieces of a civilization that had served the galaxy for 300 years. Today was the last day. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and watched a cargo vessel drift past. Inside that ship were children who would never see Earth again. They would grow up in a new place, far beyond the reach of those who had called their ancestors helpful vermin. The door behind her opened with a soft sound. Admiral Kang Tae walked in, his boots making no noise on the metal floor. He was an old man now, his hair completely white, but his back was still straight and his eyes were still sharp. In his hands, he held a thin screen showing numbers and names. The final manifest, he said quietly. 57 billion souls across 12 worlds. All evacuated. All safe. Yoon Hana did not turn around. And the assembly? They noticed nothing. Kang Tae allowed himself a small, tired smile. They are too busy debating whether we deserve the right to vote in their councils. The vote is scheduled for next month. There will be no vote, Yoon Hana said. There will be no next month. Not for them, not with us. She finally turned to face him. Her face showed the weight of the decision she had made 10 years ago, when she first signed the order to begin the quiet evacuation. 10 years of planning, 10 years of moving entire populations without anyone noticing, 10 years of smiling at alien diplomats while secretly emptying every human world. Do you regret it? Kang Tae asked. No, she said. I regret that it took us so long to understand. The door opened again. A young officer stepped inside and saluted. Captain Park Soo was barely 30 years old, born on a colony world, raised to believe in the great unity of the Galactic Assembly. He had joined the fleet because he wanted to serve something bigger than himself. Now he looked confused. Lost. Director, he said. I need to understand. We built the Assembly's stations. We healed their sick. We fought their wars. We gave them everything. Why are we leaving? Yoon Hana studied the young captain's face. She remembered being young like him, full of hope and faith. She remembered the first time an alien diplomat called her people the useful servants. She remembered smiling and pretending it did not hurt. Sit down, Captain, she said gently. Park Soo sat in a chair near the window. The stars reflected in his eyes. 300 years ago, Yoon Hana began. Humanity joined the Galactic Assembly. We were young. We were eager. We wanted to prove ourselves worthy of standing among the ancient species of the galaxy. So we worked. We worked harder than anyone. She walked slowly across the room, her hands folded behind her back. When the Pelori needed hospitals, we built them. When the Corvan needed ships, we designed them. When the beacon network that connects the galaxy began to fail, we fixed it. Every time the Assembly faced a problem, they called us. And every time, we answered. That sounds like something to be proud of, Park Soo said. It was, Kang Tae said from the corner. At first, Yoon Hana nodded. But pride turned to expectation. Expectation turned to demand. Demand turned to contempt. They stopped saying thank you. They stopped seeing us as partners. We became the workers, the fixers, the ones who cleaned up their messes while they sat in their golden councils and debated philosophy. She stopped by the window again, watching another ship depart. They called us helpful vermin. Did you know that, Captain? It is a phrase from the Corvan language. It means something that is useful, but not important, something you keep around because it serves a purpose, but something you would never respect. Park Soo's hands tightened on his knees. But surely not everyone. No, Yoon Hana agreed. Not everyone. There were kind ones. Counselor Mira of the Pelori always treated us with dignity. Keeper Sotha, the old historian, warned the Assembly many times about how they treated us, but they were voices in the wilderness. The Assembly did not listen to them, just as they did not listen to us. Admiral Kang Tae moved to stand beside the director. We sent 3 formal warnings over the past century. 3 times, we told the Assembly that we could not continue like this. 3 times, we asked for basic respect. 3 times, We were laughed at. The last ambassador who spoke up, Li Jin, was told to remember her place. Where is Ambassador Li Jin now? Park Soo asked. She is already gone, Yoon Hana said. She left a message for Counselor Mira. A farewell. And a warning. Somewhere far away, on a ship traveling toward the edge of known space, Ambassador Li Jin sat in a small room and recorded her final words for the one alien she had considered a friend. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were wet. Mira, she said to the recording device, by the time you receive this, we will be gone. I cannot tell you where. I cannot tell you why, because you already know why. You were one of the few who saw us as people. She paused and wiped her eyes. When the silence comes, remember who kept the noise at bay. Remember who fixed the machines and healed the sick, and stood between your worlds and destruction. Remember that we asked for nothing but kindness, and kindness was too much to give. She ended the recording and sent it across the stars. Back on orbital command, the final countdown had begun. The last ships were loaded. The last families were aboard. The great engines of the evacuation fleet hummed with power. Director Yoon Hana gave the final order with a voice that did not shake. Begin departure sequence. Captain Park Soo watched through the window as ship after ship vanished into the darkness, jumping to coordinates that no assembly map would ever show. Earth itself began to shimmer as massive generators activated, bending space around the entire solar system, folding it away from the galaxy like a letter being sealed. What happens now? He asked quietly. Admiral Kang Tae put a hand on the young man's shoulder. Now, he said, we find out who we are when we stop serving. The last light of Earth faded into nothing. The stars around it seemed to close together, hiding the place where humanity had been born. No explosion, no announcement, no revenge, just silence. Humanity was gone. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Assembly was the largest building ever constructed by living beings. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. Its floor could hold the representatives of 10,000 worlds. Its walls were covered in gold and crystal, symbols of the wealth and power of the species who ruled the stars. High Arbiter Velan stood at the central podium and called the 4,112th Grand Session to order. He was a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms, each decorated with rings that showed his rank and importance. His voice echoed through the massive hall like thunder. Welcome, honored representatives, to this historic gathering. Today we will discuss many important matters: trade routes, border disputes, the proper taxation of mineral exports. He paused and looked toward a section of seats near the left wall. Those seats were empty. They had been empty for 3 months. I see our human observers have once again chosen not to attend, Velan said with a thin smile. Perhaps they are busy fixing toilets somewhere. Laughter filled the chamber. Thousands of alien representatives found this very funny. The humans were always good for a joke. Warlord Drax of the Korvan Empire rose from his seat. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with red scales and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. His people had conquered dozens of worlds, and only human peacekeeping fleets had stopped them from taking more. High Arbiter, Drax said, I propose that we formally revoke the observer status of the human delegation. They have missed 15 consecutive sessions. Clearly, they do not value the honor we have given them. A reasonable proposal. Velan agreed. All in favor? The vote was nearly unanimous. The human seats were officially removed from the chamber. Workers came with tools and began dismantling the chairs before the session was even finished. In a small corner of the chamber, Counselor Mira of the Pelori watched with worried eyes. She was a small being, covered in soft blue fur, with large ears that could hear sounds from across the room. Among all the assembly species, the Pelori had always been closest to humans. They understood what it meant to be small in a galaxy of giants. Something was wrong. Mira could feel it. After the session, she walked through the winding corridors of the assembly station until she reached the communication center. It was a vast room filled with screens and machines, all connected to the beacon network that allowed instant communication across the galaxy. Connect me to Earth, she told the operator. The operator, a young being with too many eyes, typed commands into a console. Then he frowned. He typed more commands. His frown deepened. I cannot establish connection, counselor. The Earth beacon is not responding. Try the human colony on New Sol. More typing, more frowning. No response. Frontier Station 7. That is a human outpost. No response, counselor. In fact, the operator's many eyes widened. In fact, I cannot locate any human beacon in the network. Mira felt cold fear spread through her body. She turned and walked quickly toward the Hall of Records, where Keeper Sotha spent his days studying the history of the galaxy. Sotha was ancient. Nobody knew exactly how old he was, not even Sotha himself. His species had been part of the assembly since before most current members had discovered fire. His body was twisted with age, and he moved with the help of a floating chair, but his mind was sharp as a blade. He was already waiting for her when she arrived. "You have noticed," he said. It was not a question. "The humans are gone," Mira said. "All of them. Every beacon, every signal, every trace. Gone." Sotha nodded slowly. His ancient eyes were filled with sadness. "I warned them. 50 years ago, I stood before the council and warned them. I said that no species can be treated as servants forever. I said that the humans were patient, but patience has limits. They laughed at me, just as they laughed at the humans. We must tell the High Arbiter. We will. He will not believe us." They were right. Velon did not believe them. "Impossible," he said, waving all four of his arms dismissively. "The humans cannot simply disappear. They have nowhere to go. They need us. Without our protection, they would be conquered by the Corvan within a year." "High Arbiter," Mira insisted. "Our supply ships have not arrived at the frontier stations. Human medical teams have not responded to the plague outbreak on your homeworld. Human engineers have not." "Enough." Velon's voice was sharp with anger. "The humans are sulking. They are upset because we revoked their observer status. They will calm down. They will return. They always do." 1 week later, the first beacon went offline. It was a small station in a distant system. Not particularly important. Most representatives did not even notice. But Mira noticed. And Sotha noticed. And within days, more beacons began to fail. 17 systems lost connection in the first month. 53 systems in the second month. The Assembly's galaxy-spanning communication network, which had worked perfectly for 500 years, was falling apart. Engineers were sent to investigate. They returned with confused reports. The beacons were not broken. They were simply empty. The complex machinery inside them had been removed, piece by piece, over many years. What remained was hollow shells that could no longer function. Who built these beacons? Someone finally thought to ask. The answer was obvious. Humans had built them. Humans had maintained them. And humans, apparently, had been slowly dismantling them for a very long time. Panic began to spread through the assembly. Ships that relied on the beacon network for navigation found themselves lost in deep space. Messages that once traveled instantly now took weeks to arrive by conventional means. Trade routes collapsed. Economies shattered. Warlord Drax saw opportunity in chaos. Without human peacekeeping fleets watching the borders, he ordered his armies to march. 3 neutral systems fell in the first week. High Arbiter Velon demanded military response. He ordered the Assembly's Great War Fleet to mobilize against the Corvan threat. The fleet did not move. Half the ships were grounded. Their engines, designed by human engineers, had failed. The maintenance crews, all human, were gone. The instruction manuals, written in human languages, were useless without translators. The warships of the mighty Galactic Assembly sat in their docks, as helpless as broken toys. On his homeworld, Velon watched the plague spread through his people. Human doctors had cured this disease decades ago. It was supposed to be simple, but the cure required medicines that only humans knew how to make, equipment that only humans knew how to operate. His people died by thousands, then by millions. Velon stood at his window and watched the funeral fires burn across his capital city. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. "Find them," he whispered to his advisors. "Find the humans. Bring them back. Promise them anything. Everything." But the search ships returned empty. Earth's coordinates led to nothing. The space where the human homeworld should have been was just empty void, as if the star and all its planets had never existed. The humans had not just left, they had erased themselves, and the assembly, for the first time in 1,000 years, was truly alone. 6 months after the humans vanished, the galaxy began to die. Counselor Mira stood on the observation deck of her ship and watched a world burn. The planet below was called Haven, once a peaceful agricultural colony that had fed 12 systems. Now it was covered in flames and smoke as Corvan warships bombed its cities into dust. "We cannot help them," said her captain, a young Pelori named Boro. "We have no weapons. We have no reinforcements. If we try to intervene, we will die with them." Mira knew he was right. She hated that he was right. How many refugees escaped? Perhaps 10,000, out of 4 million. She closed her eyes and remembered the last time Haven had been threatened. 20 years ago. A Corvan fleet had approached this same planet with the same intentions. Human peacekeeping ships had arrived within hours. Admiral Kang Tae himself had led the defense. The Corvan had retreated without firing a shot, because everyone knew that humans did not bluff and humans did not lose. Now there were no humans. There were no peacekeepers. There was only fire. Across the galaxy, similar stories played out. Without human patrols, pirate fleets grew bold. Without human mediators, old conflicts reignited. Without human engineers, the machines that held civilization together began to break down. On the Assembly's capital station, the situation was even worse. The Great Building, once a symbol of galactic unity, had become a symbol of decay. Power failures darkened entire sections for days at a time. Water recycling systems broke down and could not be fixed. The beautiful gardens that had decorated every corridor died from neglect. Keeper Sotho walked through the dying halls and remembered what they used to look like. He remembered human gardeners tending the flowers with gentle hands. He remembered human technicians laughing as they repaired machines that alien engineers could not understand. He remembered a time when humans had been everywhere, doing everything, asking for nothing but a place at the table. They had been denied even that. He reached the Hall of Records and began his daily task, searching through ancient documents for any clue about where humanity might have gone. He had been searching for months. He had found nothing useful. What he did find were warnings. 3 formal complaints had been filed by human ambassadors over the past century. The first was polite, almost apologetic. It asked the Assembly to consider treating humans with more respect. The Council had not even bothered to vote on it. The second warning was stronger. It pointed out that humans had been serving the Assembly for 200 years without receiving basic rights. It asked for a timeline toward full membership. The Council had laughed and told the ambassador to be patient. The third warning was different. It came from Ambassador Li Jin. Just 5 years ago. It was not a request. It was a statement. "We have given you everything," Li Jin had written. "Our labor, our knowledge, our blood. We have asked for nothing but dignity. You have given us contempt. This cannot continue forever. Either you will change, or we will." The Council had responded by threatening to revoke human trading rights. Ambassador Li Jin had bowed politely and left the chamber. She never returned. Sotha put down the document and wept. He wept for the blindness of his people. He wept for the suffering that was coming. He wept for a galaxy that had thrown away its greatest gift, and only now realized what it had lost. Far from the capital, Counselor Mira continued her search. Her ship traveled to the coordinates where Earth had been. She found nothing but empty space, cold and dark and endless. "Scan again," she ordered. "Counselor, we have scanned 17 times. There is nothing here. There must be something. A trace. A signal. A particle. There is nothing. It is as if this space was never occupied. As if Earth was never real." Mira stared at the darkness outside her window. The humans had not just hidden their world. They had folded space itself, creating a barrier that no assembly technology could penetrate. They had the ability to do this all along. They had simply chosen not to use it until now. She thought about all the times humans had been dismissed as simple, and unsophisticated. She thought about how assembly scientists had mocked human technology as primitive. She thought about how wrong everyone had been. The humans had been holding back. For 300 years, they had pretended to be less than they were. They had hidden their true capabilities, perhaps to avoid frightening their hosts, perhaps to test whether the assembly could learn to value them for who they were rather than what they could do. The assembly had failed that test. "Take us to the outer rim," Mira said quietly. "If the humans are still in this galaxy, they will be somewhere far from assembly space, somewhere we never thought to look." The journey took weeks. Conventional drives were slow without the beacon network to guide them. Food supplies ran low. Crew members grew sick from recycled air that human-designed systems could no longer properly clean. But Mira refused to give up. On the 43rd day, her communications officer reported something strange. "Counselor, I am detecting a signal. Very faint. Very old. But it is definitely artificial. Source: a dead system at the edge of mapped space. No habitable planets, no resources, no reason for anyone to be there. Set course." They arrived at the dead system 3 days later. At first, it seemed as empty as everywhere else. Burnt-out stars, frozen rocks, nothing. Then Mira saw the ship. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle. It floated alone in the darkness, completely still, as if it was waiting. Its design was unmistakably human. "Scan for life signs," Mira ordered. "One life sign, Counselor. Human." Mira's heart began to beat faster. Open communications. A face appeared on the screen. It was a woman, middle-aged, with tired eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. She wore the uniform of a human ambassador, though the insignia had been removed. "Hello, Mira," said Ambassador Li Jin. "I was wondering when you would find me." "Li Jin." Mira's voice broke with emotion. "Where is everyone? Where did your people go?" "We have been searching." "I know." Li Jin's expression was sad but calm. "I know you have been searching. I know about the plague on Velen Prime. I know about the Corvan invasions. I know about the beacon network. I know about everything. Then help us, please. Come back. We need you." Li Jin was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. 300 years ago, we came to the assembly with open hands. We offered friendship. We offered service. We offered everything we had. Do you know what we asked for in return? Mira could not speak. We asked to be called friends. That was all. Not masters. Not rulers. Just friends. Equal partners in a great civilization. We would have worked for free forever, if only you had been kind. "I was kind," Mira whispered. You were. Li Jin agreed. "You were one of the few. But your kindness could not save us from the others. And eventually, even the patient must rest." She reached for something outside the view of the camera. When she brought her hand back, she was holding a small data chip. "I have been authorized to give you one gift," she said. "This contains the formula for the plague cure. It will save Velen's people. Consider it a final act of kindness from a species that you called vermin." She transmitted the data. Mira's ship received it. "Now go," Li Jin said. "Go back to your assembly. Try to build something better from the ruins. And remember us. Remember that we asked for so little, and you would not give it." The transmission ended. The human ship's engines glowed, and then it was gone, jumping to coordinates that Mira's systems could not track. She sat alone in her chair for a long time, holding the data chip that might save millions of lives. It was the last gift humanity would ever give. 2 years after humanity vanished, the Galactic Assembly was dead. Nobody declared it officially. There was no ceremony, no final meeting, no formal announcement. The great institution that had ruled the stars for 1,000 years simply stopped existing. Representatives stopped coming to sessions. Votes stopped being held. The magnificent capital station drifted in space. Half its systems failed. Its golden halls empty and dark. High Arbiter Velen had fled to his homeworld, where the plague had finally been stopped thanks to the cure Counselor Mira brought back. But the disease had killed 40 million of his people before the cure could be manufactured. The survivors did not call him High Arbiter anymore. They did not call him anything. They refused to speak his name. He lived alone in a small room in what had once been his palace. Every day, he looked out his window at the empty streets where children used to play. Every night, he dreamed of human doctors telling him everything would be fine. And then he woke up and remembered that the humans were gone forever. Warlord Drax had conquered a quarter of known space. His armies swept across system after system, taking whatever they wanted, killing whoever resisted. For a while, it seemed like he would become the new master of the galaxy. Then his empire began to fall apart. Conquering territory was easy. Governing it was hard. Drax's soldiers knew how to fight, but they did not know how to run cities. They did not know how to manage food supplies. They did not know how to keep power stations working or water flowing or crops growing. Humans had done all of those things for the assembly. Human administrators had kept civilizations running smoothly for centuries. Now there were no humans, and Drax discovered that victory without the ability to maintain it was just slow defeat. His conquered worlds starved. His armies turned on each other, fighting over shrinking resources. His generals began plotting against him. Within 2 years, the great Korvan Empire had shattered into 100 warring pieces. Drax died in his command ship, alone, killed by one of his own officers. His last words were a curse against the humans who had abandoned the galaxy and left him with nothing to rule. Across the stars, other species struggled to survive. Some formed small alliances, trying to rebuild what had been lost. Most failed. The knowledge they needed existed only in human databases that had been erased. The technology they depended on could only be maintained by human engineers who were gone. Keeper Sotha worked day and night in the dying Hall of Records, trying to preserve what remained of galactic history. His body was failing, but his mind was still sharp. He had one goal left: to make sure future generations understood what had happened. He called his project The Quiet Ones, a history of humanity's service and the Assembly's blindness. It told the story of everything humans had done for the galaxy. Every hospital they built, every plague they cured, every war they prevented, every thankless task they performed with a smile. It also told the story of how they were treated. The insults, the discrimination, the 3 ignored warnings, the ambassador who was told to remember her place. Future civilizations must learn from our mistakes. Sotha wrote in his introduction, "We were given a gift beyond measure, a species that wanted nothing but to be helpful, a species that would have carried us to the stars on their shoulders if only we had asked nicely. We threw that gift away because we were too proud to say thank you." He finished the document on the morning of his death. His assistants found him at his desk, his eyes still open, a peaceful expression on his ancient face. The document was transmitted to every surviving world in the galaxy before the communication systems finally collapsed for good. Counselor Mira reads Sotha's history on her ship, which now served as the mobile capital of a small Pelori coalition. They had gathered 12 species who wanted to build something new, something better. "We will not repeat the Assembly's mistakes," Mira told her people. "We will treat every species with respect. We will remember what happened when we forgot to be kind." She thought often about Li Jin and their final meeting. She thought about the sadness in the human ambassador's eyes. Not anger, not hatred, just exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who had given everything and received nothing in return. Sometimes, late at night, Mira wondered what humanity was doing. Were they happy, wherever they were? Were they building new cities on new worlds? Were they raising children who would never be called vermin? She hoped so. After everything they had suffered, they deserved peace. On a world far beyond the edge of known space, Director Yunhana stood in a garden and watched the sunset. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep purple. Stars began to appear. Stars that no assembly map had ever recorded. She was old now, very old. But her eyes were still clear, and her mind was still sharp. Admiral Kang Tae walked slowly toward her. He used a cane these days, but he still carried himself like a soldier. Beside him was Captain Park Soo, no longer young, no longer confused. He had become one of the most respected officers in the human fleet. "The latest reports," Kang Tae said, handing her a thin screen. The assembly has collapsed completely. Velen is dead. Drax is dead. The beacon network is gone. Yunhana looked at the information without expression. Any word from Counselor Mira? She is leading a small coalition near the outer rim. They seem to be trying to build something new. Good. Yunhana nodded slowly. Mira always understood. She was one of the few who saw us as people. Park Soo stepped forward. Director. Some of the younger officers are asking questions. They want to know if we will ever go back. If we will ever help the galaxy again. Yunhana turned to look at him. Her old eyes were tired but certain. Do you remember what I told you on the day we left Earth, Captain? You said we would find out who we are when we stop serving. And have we found out? Park Soo thought about the past 2 years. He had watched human children grow up without fear. He had seen human artists create beautiful things that were not made to please alien masters. He had witnessed human scientists explore the universe for knowledge, not for survival. Yes, he said. We have found out that we are more than servants. We are more than the helpful vermin they called us. We are a people. Our own people. Yunhana smiled. It was the first real smile Park Soo had ever seen on her face. Then you understand why we cannot go back. She turned to face the sunset again. The last light was fading, and the stars were growing bright. We gave them 300 years. We built their civilization. We healed their sick. We maintained their machines. We protected their borders. We did everything they asked, and more. All we wanted was respect. Her voice grew quiet. They could not give it. They would not give it. And now they must learn to live without us. Not as punishment. Not as revenge. But because we finally realized that we deserve better. We deserve to live for ourselves. Not for those who despise us. Kang Tae put his hand on her shoulder. The assembly is asking for mercy. Mercy is what we showed them for 3 centuries. They called it weakness. They are dying. They are facing the consequences of their choices. That is not the same as dying. If they want to live, they must learn to help themselves. Perhaps that lesson will teach them what we could not. The sun disappeared below the horizon. The garden filled with the soft light of stars. Come, Yunhana said. There is work to do. Human work. For human purposes. We have spent long enough building other people's dreams. It is time to build our own. They walked together into the growing night, leaving the old galaxy behind. 10 years after humanity vanished, the universe had changed. The Galactic Assembly was a memory. Its great capital station had been torn apart by scavengers looking for useful materials. Its golden halls had been melted down for trade goods. Its beautiful gardens had died and rotted away. Nothing remained but stories told by old beings who remembered what it used to look like. The Corvan Empire was gone. Its territories had broken into dozens of small kingdoms, each one fighting the others for scraps of power. Warlord Drax's name was now a curse. Parents told their children stories about his cruelty to teach them what happened to those who lived only for conquest. On Velan Prime, a new generation had grown up without High Arbiter Velan's lies. They had heard the truth from survivors of the plague. They knew that humans had created the cure that saved their species, and they knew how their leaders had treated humans before the departure. Young Veloni made pilgrimages to the old human embassy, now abandoned and covered in climbing plants. They left flowers and small tokens of gratitude. They wrote messages of apology that would never be read. One young Veloni, barely 20 years old, wrote a letter that became famous across the surviving worlds. To the humans we will never meet, she wrote. We are sorry. We know that sorry is not enough. We know that you gave us everything and we gave you nothing. But we want you to know that we remember. We remember your kindness. We remember your patience. We remember that you saved us even when you had every reason to let us die. Wherever you are, we hope you are happy. We hope you have found the peace you deserved and never received from us. Counselor Mira, now old and gray, read this letter with tears in her eyes. She had it carved into stone and placed in the center of the small city her coalition had built. It became a monument, a reminder, a promise. We will do better, the Pelori told themselves. We will be kind. We will be humble. We will remember the humans. The coalition Mira led had grown slowly over the decade. 12 species had become 20. 20 had become 30. They called themselves the Quiet Council. In honor of the quiet way humanity had departed, their rules were simple. Every species was equal. Every voice mattered. Every hand that offered help was thanked. Every act of kindness was remembered. It was not perfect. There were arguments and disagreements and sometimes even fights, but when tensions rose too high, someone would always say, "Remember the humans. Remember what happens when we forget to be kind." And the arguments would stop. Far from the ruins of the old galaxy, humanity built new dreams. Admiral Park Soo, now gray-haired and respected, stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched a construction fleet work on the skeleton of a new orbital station. This station would not be built to serve alien masters. It would be built for human families who wanted to live among the stars. Around him, young officers went about their duties. They were the first generation born in the new human territory. Children who had never known the assembly or the insults or the fear. They knew about the old life only from history lessons and stories their grandparents told. One young officer, a woman named Shin Yuri, approached with a report. "Admiral, long-range sensors have detected something unusual." Park Soo looked at her calmly. "What kind of unusual?" "A ship. Very small. Very old design. It matches assembly technology from before the departure." Park Soo felt something cold in his stomach. "Location? The edge of our hidden space. It is not trying to enter. It is simply waiting." "Show me." The main screen displayed the image of a tiny vessel drifting in the darkness. It was old, battered by years of travel, barely functional. A single life sign pulsed inside. "Open communications," Park Soo ordered. A face appeared on the screen. Blue fur, large ears, ancient eyes that had seen too much suffering and too much loss. Counselor Mira. She was dying. Park Soo could see it immediately. Her body was thin and weak. Her breathing was labored. She had made this journey knowing it would be her last. "Admiral Park Soo," she said softly. "I hoped I would find one of you." "Counselor Mira." Park Soo's voice was respectful. Even after everything, he remembered that she had been one of the kind ones. "You have come a long way. I had to." Her voice was fading. "Before I die, I had to tell you. We remember. The beings you left behind. We remember what you did for us. We remember your kindness. We are trying to be better." Park Soo was silent for a moment. "That is good to hear. I know you will not come back. I am not asking you to come back. But I wanted you to know that your example lives on. The Quiet Council teaches its children about humans. We teach them about service without expectation. We teach them about dignity and respect. Your departure was the hardest lesson we ever learned. But we learned it." Mira coughed weakly. Her time was almost gone. "Tell your people," she whispered. "Tell them that they changed the galaxy. Not by staying, by leaving. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the only way to teach someone the value of your presence is to show them your absence." The transmission began to fade as her ship's power failed. "Thank you," Mira said with her last breath. "Thank you for everything." The screen went dark. Park Soo stood very still for a long time. Around him, his officers worked in silence, giving him space for his thoughts. Finally, he turned to Shin Yuri. "Have her ship retrieved. Give her body a proper burial, with full honors. She was a friend of humanity. The last friend we had out there." That evening, Park Soo made the long journey to the garden world where director Yoon Hana had retired. She was very old now, spending most of her days sitting in the garden she had planted with her own hands. He told her about Counselor Mira's visit. He told her what the Pelori had said about memory and change and the Quiet Council. Yoon Hana listened without expression. When he finished, she was silent for a long time. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Park Soo asked. "Do you think we should have stayed and fought for change from within?" Yoon Hana looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the veil that hid humanity from the old galaxy, beings were struggling to rebuild. They were learning lessons that humans had tried to teach them for 3 centuries. "We tried fighting from within," she said finally. "For 300 years, we tried. We believed that if we just worked hard enough, if we just proved ourselves valuable enough, they would accept us. She shook her head slowly. Some lessons cannot be taught. They can only be learned. The assembly could not learn what we had to offer while we were offering it. They could only learn our value after we were gone. And now they are learning. A ghost of a smile crossed her old face. Mira said they teach their children about us. They tell stories about the helpful ones who left. Our absence became our message. Our silence became our voice. Park Soo sat beside her in the garden. The flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze. My granddaughter asked me today what humans are for, he said. She has never known a time when we existed to serve others. She does not understand why we would do such a thing. What did you tell her? I told her that we are not for anything. We simply are. We exist for ourselves. We create for ourselves. We love for ourselves. We are free. Yunhana reached over and took his hand. Then we succeeded, she said softly. After 300 years, we finally taught our children the most important lesson. The lesson the assembly never wanted us to learn. What lesson? That we are enough. Just as we are. Without serving anyone. Without proving anything. Without justifying our existence. We are enough. They sat together in silence as the stars came out. Millions of lights, shining down on a free people who had finally learned to live for themselves. Somewhere in the old galaxy, the beings they had left behind were building something new. Perhaps it would be better than what came before. Perhaps not. That was not humanity's concern anymore. They had given their gift. They had taught their lesson. They had shown the galaxy what kindness looked like. And what happened when kindness was rejected. Now they rested. Now they created. Now they lived. And the silence they left behind was the loudest message the galaxy had ever heard.